The room smells like antiseptic and something floral I don't recognize. The ceiling above me is white and curved, which tells me I'm not in the standard medical bay. The standard medical bay on Veyrath Crossing has flat ceilings and a permanent grease stain above Bay 4 that nobody has ever cleaned. This ceiling is clean, this ceiling is expensive. I try to sit up. My entire left side disagrees, so I stay flat and turn my head instead. And that's when I see them. A Vale elder in full ceremonial silver, standing near the window like a painting. 3 beings I've never seen before in military dress that costs more than my annual contract. 2 Kethvar in diplomatic gray, a human woman in a dark suit who looks like she hasn't slept in 2 days and is somehow still holding a data pad and a coffee at the same time. And in the corner, very small and very still, watching me with those enormous dark eyes, a child made of soft light. I stare at the ceiling again. I'm going to need more painkillers, I say to no one in particular, before this conversation starts. My name is Ren Calloway. I'm 34 years old. I haul cargo on Veyrath Crossing, which is a transit hub at the edge of the Krathali Expanse, and one of the most politically important stations in the known galaxy, which is funny, because it smells like a wet boot near the eastern docking ring no matter what the maintenance crew does. I've been here 3 years. I know the corridors better than I know most people. I know the vendors who water down the nutrition packs. I know which lifts take 30 seconds longer than they should. I know that the night chef at Commissary 7 has been undercounting my curry deliveries for 2 years, which is a separate matter, but one I feel strongly about. Humans are late arrivals to all of this. We came to interstellar society after everyone else had already built the table and chosen their seats. The Vale control 3 transit lanes, and have been traveling between stars since before we discovered fire. The Thranosi have been calculating galactic risk and resource flow for 4,000 years. The Kethvar, the species that makes up most of the raiding crews in the outer expanse, have a warrior tradition so old it predates their written language. We haul cargo, we fix pipes, we fill gaps. We are, as one Thranosi administrator politely described us to my face once, adequately functional. I'm fine with it. I never came out here to be extraordinary. It was late on a double shift night, and I was taking the maintenance corridor shortcut because the main concourse had some diplomatic event that clogged every walkway with beings in expensive clothes moving very slowly. I had a satchel with a coolant canister for a repair I'd finished an hour ago, and a cargo hook on my belt because I'd forgotten to return it to the equipment bay. The station has a rhythm. After 3 years, you feel it more than you hear it. The hum of the ventilation, the low vibration of the docking clamps, the particular echo that the lower concourse makes when it's full of market noise. I know that rhythm the way you know your own heartbeat. Something had broken it. I stopped walking before I understood why. Pure instinct. Something in the air was wrong. Too quiet in the wrong direction. A smell that didn't belong. The distant sound of something heavy being overturned. I moved to the corridor's edge and looked around the corner into the lower concourse. 8 of them. Kethvar, which I recognized immediately. Tall, scaled, built for combat in the literal evolutionary sense. They were organized and fast, and had already taken down 2 station guards who were lying very still near the entrance gate. They had mono-edged blades, long and curved and extremely efficient, and they were moving toward the cargo lock at the far end of the concourse with the focused energy of beings who had a plan and were executing it cleanly. I should have backed away right then. Response time to this corridor was 4 minutes minimum. I knew that. I could call it in, stay low, let the professionals handle it. I almost did. And then I saw the child. She was behind an overturned food cart, crouched as small as she could make herself, her 6 thin limbs folded in close. She was Vale. She had those enormous dark eyes that Vale children have, eyes that seem too big for the universe they're looking at. She was trembling. She was maybe 4 years old in Vale terms, which means she was old enough to understand exactly what was happening, and young enough to have no idea what to do about it. The Vale are the most physically fragile species in the expanse. Hollow bones, skin that bruises in atmosphere. They are brilliant and ancient, and politically powerful. And physically, they are like holding a living piece of glass. This child weighed perhaps 12 pounds. One of the raiders was going to see her in approximately 10 seconds. I stood in the shadows, and I counted. 8 armed fighters. 7 wounds minimum if I was lucky. which I wasn't going to be. I had a coolant canister and a cargo hook. I had no combat training beyond standard military discharge and 3 years of getting moderately good at solving problems with whatever was available. The math was clear. The math said, stay back. I looked at the child. I stepped out of the shadows. The first thing I did was shout, which surprised all 8 of them, and bought me about 2 seconds of confusion, and I used those 2 seconds to cross the distance to the nearest raider and hit him with everything I had. He was faster than me. He got his blade up. It caught my left forearm. Deep, clean, immediately painful. And I kept moving anyway, because stopping wasn't an option, and the pain was just information about what was still working. I used the momentum to slam his head into the edge of the overturned cart. He went down. I looked at the child. Don't look at me, I said, in the clearest galactic standard I could manage. Look at the door behind you. Count to 10 and run. She stared at me. Count, I said. The second raider came at me from the left, faster than the first. Better technique. The blade caught my thigh. I sprayed the coolant canister directly into his face, which isn't what coolant canisters are designed for, but worked considerably better than the design intended. He went down, clutching his eyes. I had about 6 seconds before he recovered. I used 4 of them to get into a better position. The third raider got me in the shoulder. I felt it more than I processed it. A hot, deep thing that I filed under "deal with later" and kept moving. I swung the cargo hook and connected with something that made a satisfying sound, and then the 4th and 5th raiders came at once, which was smart of them and extremely bad for me. They both landed cuts. Ribs, left side, 2 different angles. The pain was significant enough that my vision went white at the edges for a moment. I used the moment of their double strike, the moment they were both slightly off balance from the swing, to grab both of them and introduce them to each other head first. Physics helped. Inertia is an underappreciated ally. I heard a small sound behind me and turned my head just enough to see the child moving. Running, actually, on all 6 limbs, moving fast and low toward the door. She was counting under her breath. I heard her reach 7. The 6th blade caught me across the back, and I didn't see it coming at all. I only knew it had happened because I was suddenly on one knee, and the floor was much closer than it had been. The 7th was a thrust that should have been worse than it was, and wasn't, because the satchel strap across my left side caught some of it. Still bad. Still enough that my whole left arm went numb for a moment. I heard the door at the far end of the concourse open and close. She was out. I looked up from my knee. The 8th raider was standing still. He had his blade raised, and he was looking at me. And then he looked at the door where the child had been, and then he looked back at me. He said something in Kethvar, which I don't speak, but I've been on this station long enough to understand tone, and his tone was something I hadn't heard from a Kethvar before, something that sounded like it might be a question, something that sounded like, "What are you?" I looked up at him. Blood on the floor. 7 wounds and counting. My left side was having serious opinions about everything. Tired, I said, and I swung the cargo hook one more time. Station security found me sitting against the wall 47 seconds later, applying pressure to my own wounds with a strip torn from my jacket. I was humming something. I don't remember what. Something from when I was young. One of the officers asked me if I knew I was bleeding in several places, and I told him yes. I had been there for the bleeding. I was aware. They took me to medical. I don't remember much after that. The Vale elder near the window is the High Counselor. I learn this when he speaks. His voice is low and very precise, and he says my name correctly, which takes most species several attempts. "You saved what is most precious in all my worlds," he says. I look at him. I look at the military figures along the wall. I look at the human diplomat, who is watching me with an expression I can't quite read, something between pride and controlled anxiety. I look at the child in the corner. "Is the station commissary within your power?" I ask. "The night chef has been underpaying for my curry deliveries for 2 years. The human diplomat closes her eyes. The veiled child makes a sound. It takes me a moment to realize it's laughter. They want to know why. They always do. The Kethvar envoy in particular, a senior diplomat, older, heavy with the weight of someone who has spent decades negotiating. He cannot make it fit together. His nation's raiders are not weak. 8 of them, armed, trained, with the advantage of numbers and surprise, and a single human cargo hauler with a coolant canister. You had no duty, he says. No commission, no bond of kin or contract. No, I agree. Then I do not understand your reasoning. I think about it for a moment. I think about the cart, and the dark eyes, and the counting. She was scared, I say. And I was there. That's the whole equation. The Thrinosi admiral, old, calculating, the kind of being who has spent centuries measuring probabilities, leans forward slightly. He asks me, very directly, if I was afraid. Of course I was afraid, I say. I counted. I knew what 8 fighters meant. I'm not an idiot. Then what made you act against the calculation? I look at him. Because the math doesn't get a vote. The room is very quiet for a moment. That line goes out across 37 news networks in 6 hours. I find this out later, when I'm being bothered considerably more than I'd like. The debate about humanity's classification in the Galactic Compact has been running in closed session for weeks, apparently. There are species who have argued that we are adequately functional. There are species who have begun to argue something else. I don't know all the details. I'm a cargo hauler. I know my corridor and my route and the price of curry, which is, I maintain, a reasonable scope of knowledge. What I know is this. After that quiet moment in the hospital room, something in the way the admirals looked at each other was different than it had been when I first opened my eyes. Like something had shifted in a calculation they'd been running for years. Like one piece of data had changed the weight of all the others. I don't know what that means for anything. I don't think it's my job to know. They leave, eventually. All of them, one by one, with formal words and deep respect and gestures I half recognize. The Vale High Counselor is last, and before he goes, he holds my gaze for a long moment and says something in the Old Vale language that the translator doesn't catch. I ask him what it means. He tells me there is no direct translation, something about light that chooses to stop moving, something about the decision to stay. He leaves, and I'm alone with the child. She's still in the corner. She never left, through any of it. She's holding something in her small front limbs, something woven, small, made of bright thread in a color I don't have a name for. She crosses the room very carefully and holds it out to me. I take it. I turn it over. It's light in my palm, almost nothing. What is this? I ask. She tells me, in small and careful galactic standard. In our language, it is the word for someone who stays. I look at it for a long time. Outside the window, the Krathali expanse stretches out in every direction, enormous and ancient, and full of species that have been navigating it for thousands of years before we arrived. Stars I don't have names for, stations I've never visited, a galaxy so large that a single human cargo hauler on a single station corridor is less than a footnote in any honest accounting of it. I tuck the woven thing into my satchel, next to the place where the coolant canister used to be. Tell your grandfather, I say, that I don't need anything. I just want my old route back. She looks at me for a moment with those impossible dark eyes. Then she nods, very seriously, the way children do when they decide something matters. I close my eyes. I sleep.